Hi there. For this topic, we'll be looking at effects of tropical storms. So there are different kinds of effects. There are primary and secondary effects. Primary effects are the immediate impact of the extreme weather conditions caused by tropical storms, and secondary effects are the more long-term impacts. Let's look at primary effects first. So these are destruction of buildings, bridges, roads, railways, ports and airports, people drowning or being injured by flying debris, damage to electricity cables causing supplies to be cut, and flooding of rivers and coastal areas, which then can lead to sewage overflows, contaminating water supplies. These are things that will happen because of the extreme conditions, heavy rainfall, strong winds, and other things that can happen. And the secondary effects are things that happen in the more long term, and they are as a result of the primary effect. So it's homelessness, for example, from houses being destroyed by flooding or strong winds, which can cause distress, poverty, ill health, and even death. Lack of sanitation, which causes the spread of disease. Damage to transport links, that makes it harder for aid to arrive. Damage to businesses can cause unemployment. Damage to crops, livestock deaths, and blocking of supply lines can all then contribute to food shortages. So let's have a quick recap and look again at the secondary effects of tropical storms. So damage to businesses causes unemployment. There may be a lack of proper sanitation. There may be food shortages, and there may be homelessness. These are all secondary effects. We've got a quick question here. Now, which of the following is a primary effect of tropical storms? The options we have are lack of proper sanitation, flooding of coastal areas, food shortages, and people are left homeless. Out of those options, the flooding of coastal areas is a primary effect because that happens in the immediate short term after a tropical storm event happens, and the rest are more long term as results of the primary effects of tropical storms. Now let's have a look at a different topic, which is responses to tropical storms. So again, these can be split into two different categories: the immediate responses and long-term responses. Immediate responses are those which happen when a storm is forecast, during the storm, or directly after it hits. And long-term responses involve the restoration of an area to its former state after a storm, as well as attempts to minimise the impacts of future storms. The immediate responses are evacuation of people in advance, rescuing in isolated people and treating those who are injured, temporary shelter for the homeless, provision of food, water, gas, electricity, communication systems, the recovering of dead bodies to stop disease from spreading, as well as sending aid by NGOs or foreign governments, as well as this disaster response tools which can help record damage and let people confirm their whereabouts. These are all ones that happen in the immediate short term to make sure people are kept alive, kept safe, and protected from further damage. And, it's kind of the most important safety measures to make sure people keep safe in the immediate short term. Long-term responses are then to kind of rebuild and repair and make an area more resilient. So these are to repair damaged infrastructure, repair flood defences and make them better, repair the homes and rehouse people who've been displaced, use incentives like tax breaks to help economic recovery, enhance forecasting techniques so that these events can be predicted in the future and so that fewer people die, fewer amounts of damage are done, and then changing building regulations so more buildings can survive, as well as adjusting planning rules so that buildings aren't erected in the most at-risk areas, for example, on the coastline. Let's have a quick recap of that. So, which of the following options is a long-term response to tropical storms? And the options we have are recover dead bodies, rescue people, evacuation in advance, and repairing homes. So we're looking for a long-term response. Repairing homes is the only long-term response here because evacuation in advance is something that happens before a storm event does, so that is an immediate short-term response. And rescuing people and recovering dead bodies all happen in the immediacy after a storm event. Now let's look at how we can reduce the effects of tropical storms. And you need to look here at the 3 Ps: prediction, protection, and planning, which can help minimise the negative effects of tropical storms. Let's start with prediction. Scientists can monitor storms using data from radar, aircraft, and satellites, which can then be input into computer models to calculate a storm's predicted path. This is really important because this means people know how bad a storm may hit, where it's going to go, who needs to evacuate. So then this accurate prediction of the behaviour of storms then lets people prepare by evacuating or protecting their property. Secondly, let's look at protection. So buildings can cope with tropical storms if they're designed with like reinforced concrete or practices such as putting them on stilts to prevent floodwater damage. Flood defences can also be constructed in vulnerable areas, such as sandbags. So these are different ways of protecting buildings and other kind of really important pieces of infrastructure. Finally, there's planning. So this is ways of making sure that people are, there are systems in place to make sure that an area can cope. So, for example, emergency services need to receive specific disaster training so they know exactly how to evacuate people, what protocols are in place for, an emergency event such as a tropical storm. Then the efficiency of evacuation can be improved if governments plan special evacuation routes. Finally, future development should be planned with tropical storms in mind, and most vulnerable areas should be avoided if possible. That's kind of a slightly less direct planning. That's more sort of looking towards future, looking towards making sure that areas are kept safe instead of planning what to do in the case of an emergency. So there are different types of planning that can happen. So let's just do a quick recap of that. What are the 3 Ps? What can we do to reduce the effects of tropical storm? We can protect, we can plan, and we can predict. Another quick recap. What kind of responses are those that happen when the storm is forecast, during the storm, or directly after? Those are immediate responses.